Welcome to the MacsFuture Weekly Podcast. All Apple talk and no chit-chat.
Okay, welcome to episode 98 of the Apple Podcast. This is Lex at MacsFuture. Today is Saturday, November 19th, and we have a lot of Apple things to talk about, so let's get to it. Should be interesting. Okay, so the first story I want to talk about is, I guess, an important article by John Gruber of the famous Apple blog Daring Fireball. And John Gruber is basically criticizing the writer Malcolm Gladwell, and also, I guess, criticizing Walter Isaacson, who wrote the book on Steve Jobs. Now, let me give you a little bit of a backstory. Since I last spoke about the Steve Jobs biography, I sort of have a more interesting perspective on it, because I was listening to John Siracusa, who writes for Ars Technica and also has his own podcast, Hypercritical, on the 5x5 network. And John Siracusa does a good job of attacking Walter Isaacson, or basically saying, look, Walter Isaacson's biography is really not such a great biography. And Siracusa makes a number of points which I think are valid. And, you know, in retrospect, I did feel that there was something missing, or a number of things missing in the biography by Walter Isaacson. And among the things that Walter Isaacson says are missing are that you don't really get a sense that Walter Isaacson understood and researched the tech industry, and then questioned Steve Jobs based on stuff that was very important in the tech industry. And I do feel that Walter Isaacson sort of glosses over understanding the tech industry, and then by doing that, he doesn't really understand Steve Jobs and the innovation and what he really did. And he does gloss over a lot of stuff, like Steve Jobs' period at Next, one of the companies that he founded or took control of after he got sort of pushed out of Apple in the 1980s. But I don't know. So I think he's valid in that. I think it was kind of like a lazy biography of Steve Jobs. I mean, yeah, he did sit down with him and he did learn some intimate things about Steve Jobs and his family and his relationship with his kids, but it's kind of superficial. There's nothing really in depth. Some things are revealed. That Steve Jobs, for example, was against native apps on the iPhone. But basically, John Gruber is taking a shot at somebody else who's written an article in the New Yorker. There's a pop writer who's, accused of being kind of superficial with his pop psychology analysis, and his name is Malcolm Gladwell. And Malcolm Gladwell basically wrote an article in the New Yorker arguing that Jobs was, a quote, a tweaker. And Daring Fireball's John Gruber starts off with, quoting what the central premise by Malcolm Gladwell, that Steve Jobs was as a tweaker. And in Gladwell's article, he compares what Steve Jobs achieved not to the great inventors, but the people who followed great inventions who then tweak it to make it more popular. And here's the quote from Malcolm Gladwell's article that John Gruber starts off with. In 1779, Samuel Crompton, a retiring genius from Lancashire, invented the spinning mule, which made possible the mechanization of cotton manufacture. Yet England's real advantage was that it had Henry Stones of Horwich, who added metal rollers to the mule, and James Hargreaves of Toddington, who figured out how to smooth the acceleration and deceleration of the spinning wheel, and William Kelly of Glasgow, who worked out how to add water power to the draw stroke, and John Kennedy of Manchester, who adapted the wheel to turn out fine counts. And finally, Richard Roberts, also of Manchester, a master of precision machine tooling and the tweaker's tweaker. He created the automatic spinning mule, an exacting, high-speed, reliable rethinking of Crompton's original creation. Such men, the economists argue, provided the micro-inventions necessary to make macro-inventions highly productive and remunerative. And in this quote, Gladwell says, was Steve Jobs a Samuel Crompton, or was he a Richard Roberts? And Gruber says Jobs was neither. This is Gruber. He says, these men make for a poor comparison to Jobs because Jobs didn't really, quote, invent anything, not in the sense that Industrial Revolution inventors did. Jobs understood technology, but was not an engineer. He had profoundly exquisite taste, but was not a designer. What it was that Jobs actually did is much of the mystery of his life and his work, and Isaacson, frustratingly, had seemingly little interest in that or any recognition that there even was any sort of mystery as to just what Jobs' gifts really were. Gladwell, alas, takes Isaacson's portrait of Jobs at face value, and he then quotes, Gladwell, basically analyzing what Isaacson said, and he basically criticizes Gladwell, Gruber. It's a little confusing, because the quote that he has from Gladwell that he takes exception from is the following. In the eulogies that followed Jobs' death last month, he was repeatedly referred to as a large-scale visionary and inventor, but Isaacson's biography suggests that he was much more of a tweaker. He borrowed the characteristic features of the Macintosh, the mouse, and the icons on a screen from the engineers at Xerox PARC after his famous visit there in 1979. The first portable digital music players came out in 1996. Apple introduced the iPod in 2001 because Jobs looked at the existing music players on the market and concluded that they truly sucked. Smartphones started coming out in the 1990s. Jobs introduced the iPhone in 2007, more than a decade later, because Isaacson writes, quote, he had noticed something odd about the cell phones on the market. They all stank, just like portable music players used to, end quote. And Gruber says, if this is the standard for innovation, then what product from any company has truly been innovative? Most people can't get their heads around the idea that innovation doesn't mean creating something 100% new using never before seen technologies, ideas, and concept. Well, here's my thought on this. I think Gruber is basically saying that that Gladwell is minimizing Steve Jobs by portraying him as a mere tweaker. And I don't know if Gladwell is saying that. I think one of the, and I think he's correct, Gruber, in criticizing Isaacson by saying Isaacson didn't really do enough to figure out exactly what Steve Jobs' role was in bringing forth all these great technologies and inventions. I'll just tell you, look, I think here's my sense of having read other Steve Jobs books and Walter Isaacson's book. I think there's, this is my guess based on what I've read of Steve Jobs' genius. Steve Jobs was not an engineer, but he knew something about technology. He knew enough about technology to talk to the geeks and engineers and get a sense of what they're doing and questioning them directly. Now, remember, in the early days of Apple, when he was hooked up with Wozniak, it was just the two of them. Now, Clearly, Steve Jobs had a sense of technology, and clearly he knew enough and was geekish enough to be able to question and get an understanding of what the engineers and hardcore technology people could do. And he certainly was able to test the technology. Now, remember, when Steve Jobs started Apple, he was working at Atari, and he was working at Atari in some sort of technical capacity, like working on games or testing games or doing stuff. He wasn't really, good enough to be a real engineer, but he was buddies and shared the love for technology and geekiness with Wozniak, who was a hardcore engineer. So Steve Jobs, he wasn't just a business guy who like just knew how to sell stuff. He also knew enough about technology to question the engineer. He was sort of a bridge. He was a bridge between the geekster engineers who were just pure technologists and the consumer who wanted beautiful, cool, futuristic gadgets. And Steve's genius was that he had the drive and sheer ambition and sheer crazy ego to want to be able to do, something that might have been viewed as impossible. So to a large extent, Steve Jobs was that sort of driving visionary who could bring it all together. He's the guy who could go and push back on the engineers and say, well, why can't you do it this way? Or why can't you do it that way? Or he could talk to the component people and say, what other components are out there? Now, remember, Steve Jobs, when he started Apple with Wozniak, he was the guy who went out and bought the components that Wozniak said they needed. Steve Jobs was the guy who negotiated the parts, negotiated what was needed. So I think he's more than, he's not really a tweaker in the sense of an inventor who tweaks a prior invention, who's sitting in a lab with a prior invention and tweaks it. No, what he is I guess a visionary. He's a technology fan, and he's a product fan who knows a sense of what people want and that they don't know they're going to get. He's sort of like P.T. Barnum, where he knows how to amaze the public. And Steve Jobs is the P.T. Barnum of technology because he knows how to excite the masses. He knew how to excite the masses and thrill them like a magician thrills them with a new secret, with a new toy, with something remarkable. Now let's address this tweaking statement by Gladwell. Gladwell's point is, look, there were inventions out there already, like the mills in the cotton mills or whatever in the 18th century in England, and somebody invented it, and then someone makes it much better. The same with probably Gutenberg's press. But what Steve Jobs is, once he had that first success with Apple, he had a lot of money, and he wanted to create other great products. And so he's the pusher, the person who can amass the resources, has the vision, knows what he wants, knows what will drive the technology. So I think he's not, I wouldn't say a tweaker. He's not an inventor. He's something more unique. He's sort of like an impresario, like similar to like the people in show business. People in show business, there were great producers in show business, and they couldn't direct a movie, they couldn't act in a movie, but they knew how to put all the parts to make a hit. And that's what Steve Jobs was doing. He was like the Selznick, who made the Wizard of Oz, or Warner of Warner Brothers. He could assemble the talent in the people, and he had good taste. and he sort of knew what the public wanted. So that's my take on all of this controversy over Gladwell and the Walter Isaacson book. I think Gruber's criticism is correct in the sense that Isaacson really doesn't do a great job understanding, Steve Jobs and what he actually did and what was his actual motive. And then I think Gladwell's is kind of simplistic to say he was just a tweaker. He's an impresario. Steve Jobs is to technology what P.T. Barnum was to showmanship, or the great movie moguls in Hollywood, because they took what existed but made it greater and took it to a much greater level and took it to the future. And that's what Steve Jobs did. Now, Walter Isaacson gave a interview in a New York Times to Nick Bilton, and as electronista.com reports, Walter Isaacson says that he learned about other things that Jobs wanted to revolutionize, but he didn't go into detail about Apple's future products in his book because he felt it wasn't fair to the company. And so he said in a New York Times interview that Jobs was interested in revolutionizing, in particular, photography, textbooks, and television. So, that makes sense. I do think TV clearly could be revolutionized. It is kind of god-awful. I really can't stand my cable company, and I really want to go to a pure internet TV method. But the problem is the internet isn't yet there in terms of speed and content to really replace regular television. Now, in terms of photography, the iPhone is revolutionizing photography. I haven't taken any photographs with my Nikon D40 camera, and boy, it's got to be like a year. Now, textbooks, I haven't been in school in a long time, and textbooks clearly could be, redone, both in the grade school level and the high school level and college level. They're just way too expensive. To some extent, iTunes University, which delivers like free lessons from universities, that sort of revolutionized education. But I'm not surprised. Obviously he had great ambitions, and these areas are definitely ripe for further tinkering or further, futurist development. Okay, so an article came out in the New York Times on, November 15th, entitled "Once Wary, Apple Warms Up to Business Market." And basically, the article is saying that a lot of major companies now are embracing Apple products. And it says here that in the last few years, big companies started buying Apple products, a lot of them for their employees, and that the iPad and iPhone have given the Apple symbol a presence in workplaces that Apple never enjoyed when it was strictly on selling Macintosh computers. And it's saying that the new CEO, Tim Cook, is known to be far more at ease with the CIO's job. CIOs are the information officers at major companies or government agencies. And basically, the article is saying what I've been saying for a long time, which is Apple, which declined to comment for the article, has begun to drop hints that it sees the corporate market as a big growth opportunity. And it said that during the recent earnings call, Apple executives boasted about the portion of the Fortune 500 companies testing or deploying iPads or iPhones, which are at 92 and 93%. And, so they're basically saying, I think, the obvious, and then the article points out companies that are using the iPhone, like Alaska Airlines has 1,400 pilots who now have an iPad. and that United and Continental started giving iPads to all 11,000 of their pilots in August, and that that the IT departments are starting to work with iPhones and iPads and such. Now, I'll tell you, there was a major... I work in a very large enterprise setting during my day job. And, this enterprise setting that I work in has been very, very conservative historically when it comes to technology. I mean, it's so conservative that I'm still using at work a Dell computer running Windows XP. That's how old, and conservative the technology is. And the mobile device that's been given out in the past has been the BlackBerry. So it's all been Microsoft and BlackBerry. And, in the past, I've made attempts to get like an Apple product, to use that. I pointed out the benefits. Nothing. And in recent years, I've been showing people the iPad that I have, and arguing for its virtues because it's a real paper saver. The iPad, instead of printing out lots of documents, you can view them on a PDF on your iPad. It's great. Well, here's the funny thing. Recently, and I'm sort of mid-level in management in this enterprise situation, and recently we had a meeting in my office, the head of my office, and people from out of town who are head of the whole organization. So these very senior people came to meet with us. And so these are the business in the same business side that I'm on. And the head of my office said, look, at one point, was joking around in the meeting and said, look what they have. And they had iPads. They had company iPads. So the very senior leadership of this enterprise organization has been given iPads that are hooked up to the enterprise email, the enterprise everything. And it's funny because the head of my office was joking with me saying, aren't you jealous that they have it? And I was thinking, no, I'm not jealous. I'm actually thrilled because this is how we get products. They trickle down. I remember when the BlackBerry came to our organization 10 years ago. It started first with the BlackBerry being used at extremely senior levels. Then mid-level managers got them, and then the rank and file workers. And that's what's going to happen now with the iPad. I mean, these senior people, were very thrilled to be using in this business environment the iPad. And I'm sure, with BlackBerry foundering, the iPhone or Android phones will be making their way into the enterprise setting. So the New York Times article is really just, stating the obvious. We're going through a sea change right now in computing, and the old dominant businesses in computing, whether it's BlackBerry in the enterprise or Microsoft, they're in deep, deep trouble because Android devices, iOS devices, Apple products, they're now seen as superior to the Windows and BlackBerry products. And so I think you're going to see more and more enterprise situations, businesses making the switch from Microsoft and BlackBerry to Apple and or Google, and we're going to just see more of that. Now, a sign that Apple is going really global is that the Apple App Store in China is now accepting payments in the Chinese currency of the yuan. Now, this is huge because, Apple is becoming almost like a bank. You can buy all sorts of stuff with an iTunes account. So it basically says here, using bank cards, like Chinese bank cards, people in China can add money to an iTunes account in preset amounts, an option not available yet in the United States. So you can do prepayments in China. I guess because, there's an issue with credit, like how good is the credit of the people. So I read about this on iPodNN.com, and it basically says that the stores in the App Store in China previously only allowed payments with credit cards supporting US dollars. So this is going to really open up the iTunes Store in China, because you got to figure there's a lot of people who didn't have credit cards with dollars on them. And it says here that the change is believed also to be an attempt to deter piracy, as well as the use of so-called black cards, which involve temporary iTunes accounts associated with hacked credit cards. So, I don't know. I think this is good news, because Apple is obviously becoming more global, and this is going to open up iTunes and the App Store to more people who don't have dollar-denominated credit cards. So, good job, Apple. Now, a study has come out which I think sort of illustrates the obvious, because we already knew that the iPhone 4S had faster data speeds on AT&T when it works. But now there's MacRumors.com reports a study by something called Metrica Wireless, which is a mobile performance measurement company. And basically it says that AT&T has the fastest iPhone 4S data speeds for both upload and download speeds, and that Sprint's data speed is roughly 5 times slower. And, Verizon's somewhat behind. So I'm not surprised by this. We knew that, AT&T supposedly has faster 3G speeds on the iPhone 4S. And on the other hand, AT&T's service sometimes, even though you have this faster connection, doesn't work. Where I work during the day, the coverage is terrible because I think there's too many people with AT&T iPhones. And so even though I'm supposed to have faster data speeds, the data, crawls to a halt. It's very frustrating. I mean, frankly, I'm looking for the days when we truly have good wireless service for our mobile computing devices. And I don't know when that day is going to come, but I hope it's soon. Well, it's almost Thanksgiving, and the rumors regarding what the iPad 3 is going to look like are already out. MacRumors reports on a story from something called iLounge, and it's reporting that the next iPad 3 is going to launch in March, and that it'll be thicker than the iPad 2 by 0.7 millimeters. And apparently it's going to be thicker to incorporate a dual light bar system for the high resolution display. I'm not sure what a dual bar light system is. And I don't know, are you willing to have a slightly thicker iPad in exchange for a higher resolution screen? To me, the thickness wouldn't be the issue. As long as it's not heavier than the current iPad 2, I'll be fine with that. But I really like having a thin and light iPad. I would like to have a lighter iPad. The story also says that the iPhone 5 design is going to be something different than the iPhone 4S, that it's going to have a 4-inch display up from 3.5 inches, and it'll be 8 millimeters longer than the current form factor. And I don't know, do you want a bigger iPhone? They say that it's going to be launched in the summer. What else? It says here that the MacBook Pro is going to be coming out with a 15-inch ultra-thin MacBook notebook, which is going to be like a MacBook Air. And there were rumors that Apple was close to releasing a 15-inch MacBook Air, and there were problems with it. So Apple only came out last year with the 13-inch and the 11-inch MacBook Air. And I'll tell you, the MacBook Air line is fantastic. Apple's selling crazy amounts of MacBook Air, so I think Apple's definitely going to come out with a 15-inch MacBook Air, and I wouldn't be surprised if early next year we have a MacBook Air. I mean, they're just such elegant computers. My 11-inch MacBook Air is just fantastic. It's so light, so mobile. I would like it if Apple built it with some sort of 3G chip in there. I think that would be kind of cool. So we'll have to see. Obviously, there's going to be innovation continuing. Now, I really think that another area of great disruption that we're going to have is in wireless networking. Now, I wrote this blog post in which I pointed out that Macworld reports that Steve Jobs, before launching the iPhone, really considered launching his own wireless network for connecting customers to the internet. And this is what Macworld reported. It said, Steve Jobs initially hoped to create his own network with the unlicensed spectrum that Wi-Fi uses rather than work with the mobile operators, said wireless industry legend John Stanton. Stanton, currently chairman at venture capital firm Trilogy Partners, said he spent a fair amount of time with Jobs between 2005 and 2007. Quote, he wanted to replace carriers, end quote, Stanton said of Jobs, the Apple founder and CEO who passed away recently after a battle with cancer. Quote, he and I spent a lot of time talking about whether synthetically you could create a carrier using Wi-Fi spectrum. That was part of his vision, end quote. So this is what I wrote. I said, I can tell you that the services that we use to connect to the internet, cable, high-speed internet, and cell phone, wireless, etc., are ripe for disruption. Steve Jobs clearly understood that the next area of disruption is the way we connect to the internet. I am thoroughly disgusted by the current state of service for access to the internet. At home, I have Time Warner Cable, and I'm paying over $40 per month for internet access that is limited to the home, and while it has a fast download speed, the upload speed is less than 1 megabytes per second. On top of that, on my iPhone, I am paying $30 per month for data access on AT&T Wireless for my iPhone, and top of that, $55 per month for phone calls, which are nothing more than digital calling. As many people know, the AT&T wireless service stinks. So while I'm supposed to get fast data speeds, I'm not getting them because of poor capacity. We have seen amazing progress in mobile devices as well as computers. The real bottleneck is access to the internet, both mobile and at home. The companies providing internet access, the cable companies and Ma Bell spin-offs like Verizon and AT&T, are old, crappy companies that are inefficient and mismanaged. Apple solving the TV problem isn't really going to fully happen until Apple or someone else disrupts the business of connecting to the internet. A true disruption to the internet connection business will displace the landline internet providers and the mobile internet providers. Among other things, a true disruptor will provide us better quality at a low price. Here is what I envision and hope for. An ISP that provides super fast internet connection for one price for all of our devices. So rather than paying a fee for my iPhone and another fee for access to the internet at home, I pay one monthly fee and have fast, reliable internet connection everywhere on all my devices. And once I pay that, the other crazy fees, like paying extra for telephone access and extra for TV services, will disappear. Recently, I temporarily did not have use of my iPhone, but I had my iPad 2, which has 3G access. I realized that for $25 per month, the iPad 2 served both as an internet computer and a phone. With voice-over IP apps on the iPad, it essentially can act as an iPhone. There is no point to paying $85 per month to AT&T Wireless for both phone and data monthly service. Similarly, once a device like the iPad has even faster internet service for a monthly fee of $25 per month, there will be no need for the $175 per month that I pay for cable TV and cable internet at home. The iPad, with fast internet connection via wireless, will sub for what I get out of the TV. Right now, I have many apps on my iPad that provide video content, including from traditional TV providers. The iPad streams that content to my large TV via Apple TV. I am very close to dumping my cable TV and just using cable internet at home. But I can see that in the very near future, I will get faster wireless data speeds that will obviate the need for a landline internet connection. So, of course, Steve Jobs saw that as the future, and of course, he explored doing that pre-2007. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Now, one of the things that came out this week was the Kindle Fire. People started doing reviews and using it, and reviews haven't been that great. But one of the things that I think is really crazy is that even though Apple and Amazon are somewhat different, their stock price seems to go in tandem. And look at this chart. I put together a chart using Yahoo Finance, and it's pretty incredible. Like, the chart shows that Amazon stock has been going up and down almost in simultaneous tandem with Apple stock. But the thing is, Apple's has truly been growing profits at a crazy, pace, while Amazon has not been really growing profits at a crazy pace. But look at this. It's almost, if you look at this chart, they're almost neck and neck. Amazon's in blue, Apple's in red. So Apple has gone up since 2007, 350%, and Amazon has gone up 400%. But it's, my point is, though, they're very different companies. Amazon barely has any sort of profit, and Apple has like 40%, 35% profit margins. So I just think this is kind of silly that they're tracking each other. Apple should be going way up, and Amazon should not. Well, according to one survey, Apple should be very happy in the holiday period, because a survey was done, and who did the survey? I'm looking at this at something called appleforladies.com, and it says that the latest Nielsen survey, Nielsen's a famous survey company, says that iPad tops holiday wish list for kids. And apparently 44% of those surveyed wanted an iPad for Christmas. iPod Touch came in second, iPhone third, computer fourth, and then non-tablet iPads fifth. And then after that, Nintendo DS, Connect for Xbox, television set, smartphone, Sony PlayStation. The Wii was down to 11%. So basically, it says here that Nielsen surveyed a general population sample of 3,000 to obtain these results, and particularly for kids aged to 6 to 12. The survey makes Apple predictions of record sales this holiday quarter, look more likely than ever. And this is going to be huge if it's true that kids want these Apple devices. Then it's going to be a huge quarter of sales for Apple. Okay, so I think I mentioned this last week, but I have returned my iPhone 4S, which I bought with a subsidy, a little bit of a subsidy from AT&T. I had like a $200 subsidy, and I returned it because last Saturday, Apple started finally selling a contract-free, unlocked iPhone at full price. Now, so I acted quickly. I went to the website, I ordered it. I bought the 32 gigabyte model in white on AT&T. You can only get the unlocked contract-free iPhone if you order an AT&T version. And it won't come with a SIM card. And the 32 gigabyte is $749. The 64 gigabyte unlocked without a contract is $849. Now what's particularly amazing, if you think about it, is these iPhones, particularly the 64 gigabyte one, are very close in price to a MacBook Air. An 11-inch MacBook Air, the cheapest one, is $999, and you get even more storage. But I guess what you're paying for is having this phone chip in there and having great cameras and all this technology miniaturized. So basically, it went smoothly with Apple. I shipped my iPhone 4S the same. It's actually the same model Apple made it very easy for me to ship it back. You have 30 days from the time that you buy your iPhone to return it. So I called up Apple last weekend, and they emailed me a Federal Express label, so it didn't cost me anything to ship it back. On Monday, I packed it and brought it to a FedEx and shipped it off. And by Wednesday, Apple had the phone back. And by Thursday, Apple had credited my account, my credit card, back the $500 or so that I paid for the 32 gigabyte white iPhone 4S. Meanwhile, when I purchased the unlocked contract-free iPhone 4S last Saturday, it told me that it would ship in 1 to 2 weeks. Well, actually, I got a notification today that it had shipped, and it left Shenzhen, China, yesterday or today at 7:12 a.m. in China time on November 19th. And it says I'm not going to get it until maybe the 25th. And it says that of the 20th, it's in Hong Kong, Lantau Island. So I'd be curious to see if I get it before Thanksgiving, before this Thursday. But anyways, I'm kind of psyched. And one of the first things I'm going to do is test it to see if it works with T-Mobile GSM. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a T-Mobile store and buy for $10 a pay-as-you-wish SIM card, and see how well that works. And I mean, look, the main reason I'm getting the unlocked is because I only got a $200 subsidy from AT&T, and it extended my contract for 2 years from now. So if I didn't, by returning it, it undoes that extension, and so my AT&T contract will expire in June of 2012, which is 2 years from when the launch of the iPhone 4 occurred. And meanwhile, I've been using my old iPhone 4. I was going to sell it, but I didn't. And AT&T was kind enough to give me a free SIM card, and I activated the old iPhone 4, and my contract was reversed. I got all my minutes back. My plan now will expire in the summer. And probably what I'll do is I'll probably buy the iPhone 5, and I'll probably sell this unlocked iPhone 4S. I think it's going to sell very well, simply because people want it on overseas. So, should be interesting. I think this is going to be a worthwhile phone, and I'm looking forward to it. Okay, now word comes that, Hollywood is busy trying to make a movie about Steve Jobs, obviously to capitalize on all the publicity surrounding his death. And the Sun in England has a story that says that, among other people, George Clooney is in the running to play the late Steve Jobs in the movie. It says that he is battling it out with his former ER co-star Noah Wyle for the role. Noah Wyle is 10 years younger. According to Now magazine, filming on the project is due to start next year. And now remember, Noah Wyle previously played Steve Jobs. I think it was Noah Wyle. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that that Steve's a better actor? Is George Clooney a better actor to play Steve Jobs, or Noah Wyle? I don't know. I mean, I think it should be interesting. I hope they don't butcher the movie. It's obviously going to be an important movie for those who are in the Apple Mac community. So we'll have to see. Now, good news for the Mac. Apparently, Apple has now reached its highest worldwide market share in the PC market. So I guess, and this is according to the LA Times blog, it says that Apple's Mac has reached 5.2% of worldwide computer sales. Now, I don't think that includes iPad or iPhone or iPod Touch sales. It says here that Mac shipment growth in the third quarter outpaced the total PC market for the 22nd straight quarter, 24.6% to 5.3%, and that in the home market, Mac's growth was 25.6% versus 4% for the overall market. So basically, worldwide, Apple has 5%, a little over 5% of the total computer market. But look, I would say that the computer market includes iPads, iPod Touches, and iPhones. These are computers too. And I bet you there, Apple's share, when you combine that, is actually higher. And now it says here this is the highest percentage since 15 years ago. So that, I guess, would have been 1996. Anyways, like I think this metric is wrong. I think you got to include the iPad, the iPhone, and the iPod Touch and other computer-like mobile devices in the category of computers. Okay, so that's it for episode 98 of the Apple Podcast. This is Lex at MacsFuture.com. Thanks for listening. Remember, this is a chit-chat-free podcast all about the Apple. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to give it a good rating if you can in the iTunes Store or on Apple or on YouTube or Blip TV. So again, thanks for listening.